This is the Protestant Libertarian Podcast, a project of the Libertarian Christian Institute and part of the Christians for Liberty Network. I really hope that you guys enjoy today's show. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Protestant Libertarian Podcast. I was supposed to have an interview this Saturday morning, October 26th, and the interview fell through. No big deal. We're going to reschedule for another time. So LCI has been encouraging me to try to get more into the video side of content production, and I had a little bit of free time that I had allocated for this interview. So I recorded a short video that I threw up on YouTube about why I can't support Donald Trump or Kamala Harris in this upcoming election and why I think that regardless of who wins, nothing is going to change in American society. And I put it on YouTube, and some people have watched it, which is really cool. I'll put a link to the YouTube video in the show notes. Going to try to do a little more video content here in the future, but as always, my RSS feed, my podcast stream is going to be the place to go for all of my content here. I am going to be repeating some arguments I've made over the last couple of weeks, focusing a little more on Kamala Harris in this one than on Donald Trump, but I hope that you guys enjoy a very short episode that you can also find over on YouTube. Before you listen to this too, I have a brand new article over at the Libertarian Christian Institute that is called No, the New Testament Does Not Teach Socialism. It also dropped on Saturday morning. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes as well so that you guys can go over there and read about why I do not believe that the New Testament actually endorses socialism as many people claim that it does. So I hope that you guys enjoy the content today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'm looking forward to hearing your reactions. Let's get into it. Hey, what's going on, guys? I was supposed to have an interview this morning with someone from Europe, really good guy. We're going to make the interview happen soon, but he was not able to make it today for just a personal reason. So we're going to get there before too long. But I figured I had a little bit of time, and the Libertarian Christian Institute has been wanting me to work on my video game and getting more and more content up there on YouTube. And so I rarely record anything for YouTube. I think I have like maybe 2 shorts, and the rest of my YouTube account is just my podcast feed with a picture of the icon for my podcast. So I figured I would try to record something very short that I will throw on YouTube, but then also throw up on my RSS feed this week. So this isn't going to be very long. This is me trying to test out this stuff, but I just want to talk a little bit about the upcoming election. I will say that I did not take a shower before I did this. I went for a long run this morning, and I was kind of expecting that we do the interview and then I go get cleaned up and have my day. So I did brush my teeth, so everything's good with that, so if I look a little disheveled, that is the reason why I am doing that. So I am recording this on Saturday morning. It is October the 26th. So we are, 9 days away from the election. And I've released a lot of material over the last few weeks where I've talked about how I just can't bring myself to support Donald Trump. And obviously I can't support Kamala Harris. And I thought this might be a good time to just talk about some of the reasons why I can't, and some of the hypocrisy that I see, especially coming from the Christian left in terms of supporting Kamala Harris. Now, we'll start with Trump. This morning, the Joe Rogan podcast with Donald Trump came out. I'm about halfway through it again, listening to that on my run this morning. Very interesting. He does sound incredibly old, but he's very personable. He's a very personable and kind of likable guy. So I understand why a lot of people think that he is an attractive political candidate. I did a whole episode a few weeks back, and you can go and look on that on my show, where I gave the case against Donald Trump. I know that a lot of libertarians, especially in swing states, are choosing to support Donald Trump, and I completely understand why they are doing that. I do think that he is the better of the 2 major party candidates that we have right now. But as a libertarian and as a Christian, as someone who believes that Jesus is the Messiah and that there is no other competitor, I just cannot get behind somebody that I believed engaged in war crimes. And I also can't get past his record on COVID. I also think that he had a fairly lackluster economic record as well. I think that a lot of the decisions that he made in terms of economics, as his administration tried to pursue more of a limited government approach, so to speak, to economics, were actually not very limited government and would have had long-term negative consequences. We talked about how Donald Trump's biggest problem was that, the tax cuts were great. I think deregulation, as he says on the Joe Rogan episode, was probably his greatest asset as a presidential candidate. I think that was the thing that his administration did better, but he didn't decrease spending. That's a huge huge problem. Now, he has this idea that I find really interesting to replace the income tax with tariffs. Now, obviously, from a free market perspective, tariffs are not ideal, but I do think that that might be a better system than the current income tax system that we have right now, where we are literally slaves to the federal government for at least 20% of our working week. And those people that earn higher incomes are slaves to the federal government for even more than that. Because again, with an income tax, you're literally working for somebody else without your consent. Like none of us ever signed a paper saying that we had to give our money over to the federal government. Like it just doesn't seem like that's ethical. And that, I mean, that is literally what slavery is. It's amazing that people don't understand that. But so I do think that there's a good moral case and a good economic case to be made that tariffs are more preferable than the income tax. But what I don't see from Trump is the decrease in spending that we would have to have in order to not have an economy-wide economic collapse. And he seems to have absolutely no knowledge whatsoever of monetary theory and the fact that the Federal Reserve can't just keep on printing money and keeping interest rates artificially low indefinitely. At some point in history, that entire artificial system of fiat currency is going to come collapsing down if we don't do something to rein in the Fed. I also just don't like Trump, even in the Joe Rogan episode, has some great rhetoric on war. He says that a lot of the wars that we're involved in are completely unnecessary, but then he also unequivocally supports Israel, which is just a non-starter, I think, for any Christian that believes in justice. Again, Israel has a right, the Israeli government has a right to defend themselves, but you don't defend yourself by bombing hospitals that are full of little children because one or two militias were reported as being seen close to that. And Donald Trump seems to want to continue to support Israel. So again, for me, as a Christian that believes that Jesus is the Messiah and that every single human being has intrinsic value, that everyone is created in the image and likeness of God, I believe that the lives of the young Israeli soldiers are just as valuable as mine. I believe that the lives of the Palestinian women and children that are being killed are just as valuable as mine. I don't want a single dollar going to people that are just going to murder innocent people. And I just don't think that we can support at all the American empire. And again, I've been thinking a lot about the book of Revelation. I have a commentary that I'm going to be reading for my podcast, hopefully going to get the author on there to talk about the book of Revelation because I've wanted to do that for a while. And this is a pretty good looking commentary. I'll be posting about it on my social media this week. But I do believe that one of the main themes of the book of Revelation is the end of all empires, that the reason why Rome is compared to Babylon, and, you know, by no means is the writer of the book of Revelation the only person to make this connection in the New Testament. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that Rome is, in fact, one of the evil empires that must be undone. But if you read the book of Revelation, Revelation chapter 18, Revelation chapter 13, it's all over the place. The kingdom of God is diametrically opposed to the empires of man. And I don't think that you can make a historical or a political or philosophical argument against the idea that the United States is the de facto world empire. And just like Babylon and Rome and every other empire before it, America is eventually going to collapse. That's just the natural course of empire. And as Christians, we should be opposed to every form of imperialism. And so for me to get out there as a Christian and vote for one of the two major party candidates to be in charge of the American empire, thinking that this is going to make a difference, I just don't believe that I can justify that morally as a Christian. Again, there are a lot of great people out there. Dave Casey, talked about him on talk with him on LCI's Green Room. He has done a great job of making the case why libertarians should vote for Trump for pragmatic reasons. I totally get it. And in a lot of ways, I can actually respect the perspective that he's coming from. Like, I totally understand why he would feel that way, and why he would think that way. And there are a lot of libertarians that I have a lot of respect for that are voting for Trump, obviously preferable to the alternative, in my opinion, and as well as in the opinion of many libertarians. But I have a candidate in Chase Oliver who is not a war criminal, who is great on like taxation. He's great on the size of the federal government. He's great on war. Like, he's great on the Fed. All of these issues that I think are really, really important, he's good on. And so if I am going to go out and vote, I'm going to go out and vote for him. I also have the benefit, as I say all the time, of being able to go and vote for Thomas Massie. Now, he's running unopposed, so my vote really doesn't make that big of a difference. But I want to jack those numbers up. You know, I want Thomas Massie to win, you know, with 100% of the votes and have a large number of voters go out and support him. So it's easy to go out and support Thomas Massie because I really do believe that he does not want my tax dollars being used to bomb innocent women and children. And I believe that Chase Oliver is the only presidential candidate. Well, not the only president. Obviously, you have Jill Stein, who's not a war criminal, and things like that. But Chase Oliver is the presidential candidate that most closely aligns with my values, and I live in a state that's going to go to Trump. So it's very easy for me to vote for Chase Oliver without there being any sort of consequences to that. So that's my thought on Trump, and just the reasons why I just can't bring myself to vote for him. Again, I have said a million times that I hope that I'm wrong and that Donald Trump, if he wins, winds up actually reducing the size and scope of the federal government. And anyone that's listening to this right now, if you have a podcast and you're a conservative or a libertarian, and Donald Trump actually turns things around and reins in the size of the federal government and stops fighting all of these wars, then I promise you, I will come on your show and I will happily explain why I was wrong and what I got wrong about Trump. I'm totally happy to do that. I just don't think that it's going to make a difference. The progressive Christians are way worse. And here's the reason for that. Okay. So this is just, and I follow a lot of progressive Christians on Twitter. As I've said before, I've offered invitations to many progressive Christians to come on my show just because I'm interested in the phenomenon of progressive Christianity, and theologically and in terms of the damage that's been done by the politicization of the American evangelical church. There is actually a lot of overlap between some of the positions that I hold and some of the positions that the progressive Christians hold. Like, I understand why there are a lot of people that are raised in fundamentalist evangelical homes that wind up rejecting that. And so they go and they find a church and they find a set of theologies that is the exact opposite of the ones that they held when they were young. I can sympathize with that. I totally get where they're coming from. I think it's reasonable. And I would love to be able to just talk with them about that and about their journey. But the problem with progressive Christians is that, and I've had this theory for a while, the problem with a lot of progressive Christians in America is that they were raised in super conservative, very fundamentalist homes where they were not allowed to ask any questions and they couldn't have any dialogue with anyone that did not agree with everything that they believed. And so then when they leave conservative evangelicalism, a lot of them move to progressive evangelicalism or ex-evangelicalism, where they're just as fundamentalist, only they've exchanged all of their super conservative theological and political beliefs for super progressive theological and political beliefs. And they also refuse to ask questions, and they also refuse to have dialogue with people that are different than them. And so I think that fundamentalist evangelical conservative Christianity is just the mirror image of fundamentalist, progressive, liberal Christianity. Like, I think that structurally those two groups are exactly the same. And I actually wrote an article on LCI that made that exact argument about a year ago. And you can go and look that up. I think I called it progressive Christian nationalism, just demonstrating that structurally there's not a lot of difference between the progressive Christians and the super conservative Christian or Christian nationalist types. In terms of policy and theology, they're very, very different. But when it comes to the actual implementation of political power, both groups want to have their preferred candidate in charge of the American empire so that they can impose their will on everybody else by force. The progressive Christians always dress this up in the language of egalitarianism and justice and compassion and mercy. But at the end of the day, if you want Kamala Harris to be in charge of the American empire so that she can raise taxes and increase the size of the welfare state and regulate our businesses and censor certain information, you are voting for someone that you want to oppress people that are different than you. And that makes you no different than the hyper-conservative evangelical Christians. I'm not sure why I'm holding this pen. I'm going to put that down because it's a little weird. But that is my biggest critique of these progressives. And they really do believe that they are doing it for the right reason. But at the end of the day, they say that they're anti-imperial. They say that they're on the side of the poor and the marginalized. But every single policy that they support benefits the wealthiest and most powerful people in our society. And again, just if you step back and look at this historically, the Great War on Poverty started under Lyndon Johnson in the middle of the 1960s. We've been fighting the war on poverty for 60 years at the federal level, and nothing has gotten better. So at a certain point, if you fight a war for that long, you should just say that we've made some mistakes. This isn't working. We need to adjust our course and we need to do something different. We need to do something better. And I just don't think that progressives have a good sense of that. And it's because a lot of these progressive Christians don't read any economic literature other than literature that's produced by critical theorists that don't have any basis in economic reality. And it's very unfortunate that it has to be like that. But again, my problem with the progressive Christians is that sometimes they have this really great rhetoric of being anti-imperial and we shouldn't support Christian nationalists and we need to have a society that's based on justice and love and compassion. And I agree with all of those things, but you can't vote for Kamala Harris and say that you actually support those things. And my biggest critique, obviously, is that, the entire Israel-Palestine conflict, which is very unpopular with old school Democrats, by the way, like it's like the United States support for Israel is very unpopular, is happening because of Harris's administration, right? It's the Biden-Harris administration that is giving Israel billions of dollars to fight what is basically an ethnic cleansing campaign against the Palestinians. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. But these progressives are going to go out and vote for her and feel morally superior to the conservatives that go and vote for Trump. I just want to throw this out there. I think this is really important. I've been dropping this, and like for the progressive Christians, I like to just kind of drop this into the comments when they post stuff on Twitter. Kamala Harris has received lots of money. Who knows how much money, but she's received lots of money from organizations like AIPAC. Your candidate's not about truth and justice and the little man if they're receiving money from AIPAC. And then I think the most damning condemnation of Kamala Harris and her entire campaign is that she was endorsed by Dick Cheney. Oh, that's so gross. Like, he was the architect of the very failed war on terror, lied about the Taliban being connected to al-Qaeda, lied about Saddam having weapons of mass destruction, illegally occupied Afghanistan, illegally invaded Iraq. Millions of people have died because of the war on terror. And he is one of the main people that began the war on terror. He's one of the architects of the war on terror. And now he's supporting Kamala Harris. Look, like, if Dick Cheney is supporting your candidate is a corrupt, evil person. That's just the way that it is. There's no way around that. If Dick Cheney is your guy, then you're not voting for truth or peace or justice or the little guy. All you are doing is giving your stamp of approval for the entire war on terror and the entire post 9/11 American foreign policy establishment, which is exactly what these progressive Christians are doing. By voting for Kamala Harris and openly celebrating Kamala Harris, they are in fact endorsing Dick Cheney. They're saying that Dick Cheney made the right call. And anyone that thinks that Dick Cheney made the right call they do not have their head in reality in any way, shape, or form. And so I just think it's very hypocritical that these progressive Christians, who do have some good instincts, and I wish that we could have more conversations with them, because there are some of them that are out there that I think are very, they just need a little bit of economic understanding, and they wouldn't be that far from where we are at the Libertarian Christian Institute. But it just, the irony is not lost on me that these people all think that by voting for Kamala Harris, they're voting for peace and justice and truth and love, and that this is what God wants them to do, and they're just voting for another ruler of the American empire who's literally funding Israel's genocidal war against Palestinians in the Middle East right now. I mean, that alone should be enough to disqualify you from voting for Kamala Harris. If Dick Cheney supports your candidate sucks. That's pretty much the end of the story. So for me, I'm someone who's kind of cynical about this, and I'm in a very interesting position because the majority of the people in my life, except for probably my wife and then my libertarian friends, like everyone's either going to vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. And at the end of the day, again, I can respect and appreciate the vote for Donald Trump, but it is very, very scary to me. Well, it's not really scary. I think this is just the way of the world. It's very, very telling about where we are at as a civilization, that the vast majority of Americans, millions and millions and millions of Americans on Tuesday, not this coming Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, are going to vote for a war criminal. Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are guilty of war crimes against completely innocent people, and I just don't think that we should ever vote for those people. But it's amazing that so many people will go out and vote and not even reflect on the legacy of Donald Trump. I mean, we have 4 years of his presidential record, and anyone that actually dives into the data can see that it's not quite as good as Donald Trump likes to think that it was. And we also have 4 years of Biden and Harris's record, which is absolutely atrocious as well. They're both just terrible, and the vast majority of Americans is going to go and pick one of the two of them. My buddy Cody Cook, I have him on the show a lot. Probably going to have him on again sometime soon to talk about the election. He's an Anabaptist, and I know that there are a lot of Anabaptists out there that don't even believe in voting. And I have to say that while I don't agree with that 100%, I can definitely see the logic of it, and I respect it. I would rather, if at the top of the ticket, my only two options were Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, and I could not write anybody in, and there was not a libertarian candidate running, then I just wouldn't vote, because I just can't put my name behind somebody that I believe has committed war crimes, and as a libertarian that I believe is a socialist. And I think if you look at Donald Trump's economic policies and if you look at Kamala Harris's economic policies, they're both really bad, and they're both rooted in socialism and the Misesian sense of the term. Again, Ludwig von Mises is chapter 15 of his book, Human Action. He makes the case that there is no such thing as a mixed economy. You either have free markets or you have varying degrees of socialism. And as someone who really does believe in the tenets of Austrian economics, like, I can't vote for a socialist either, because I think socialism is immoral and ineffective. So that's the reason why I can't throw my weight behind either of those candidates. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the United States is not run by a president. The United States is run by the giant federal bureaucracy that has been created and constantly expanded over the last 100 years of American history. And it's these people, unelected bureaucrats, that make the decisions that directly impact our lives, unfortunately. And I just don't think that putting our guy in charge of the imperial structure, they're putting, your preferred person in charge of the American imperial order, is going to change anything. I truly, truly believe that regardless of who wins the election, nothing's going to change. I don't think that this election is going to make a difference at all. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. Like I said, I'm doing this on video. I'm putting this on YouTube. This is like my first full-length YouTube video of all time where you can actually see my face, see what I look like here, even though I can get a shower and I'm looking kind of dirty after my run this morning. But I just don't believe anything's going to change. And that's why I don't worry about this election. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go to church tomorrow morning. I get to preach tomorrow. It's going to be great. I'll throw that on the feed in a little in a little bit. And then, next week I'll be going to church. I'm going to see my friends. I'm going to see my family. I'm going to do things that I love. I'm going to read great books. I'm going to continue to try to be involved in my community. I'm going to continue to go to work. Like, I'm going to continue to do the things that I like doing, realizing that the political process is not the mechanism for change. And honestly, I don't believe that our society is ever going to change until people's hearts are changed. And as a Christian, this is the biggest motivating factor for me to try to spread the gospel and to try to help people better understand how the world actually works. That's, I think, where we're actually going to make real impactful changes. Like, if you want to change the world, if you want to make a difference in society, if you think that things are really, really bad and you want them to get better, then it's on you, it's on me, it's on all of us to go out and treat people with love and compassion and kindness and respect, and to do our best to show people the love of God that God has given to us. That's what we have to do as Christians, which is why I'm not going to put my hope in the political process, and why I think that there are a lot of Christians that are selling out their faith by wholeheartedly, openly endorsing, supporting, affirming, and loving either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. I just don't think that it can be done. So that's my thought on that. 20 minutes is going to be a great first YouTube video. Hopefully next time I record one of these solo YouTube videos, it will, I'll maybe look a little bit more presentable than I do right now, but I appreciate you sticking with me. I know that there are people that are going to disagree with this, and that's cool. Like, I'm not someone who's mean or angry or anything like that. And in fact, if you are somebody that has something to say in a respectful and intelligent way, and you would like to have a conversation with me about it, I'm always happy to have a conversation with people that don't share my perspective. I think it's good to get as many ideas out there as possible so that we can engage with and think through all of these very important concepts and ideas. So that is exactly how I feel about this entire situation. So again, thank you guys so much for listening to the end of the episode here. Check my podcast out on all the RSS feeds. Please, if you can, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to build that up a little bit. Going to put more video content out there like this. This will show up on the RSS feeds too, but I'll probably put this on YouTube first. And just continue to support the Libertarian Christian Institute, libertarianchristians.com. You can go there to the shop, get the highball glass, get the mugs, get all the good merchandise, and then see articles that are written by people like me. And just thank you guys so much for being interested in these ideas that I think are really important. You all are amazing, and I will see you guys very soon. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Protestant Libertarian Podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at theprotestantlibertarian@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter. You can follow me at the handle @ProLibertyPod. Again, that is @ProLibertyPod. And you can also visit me at theprotestantlibertarianpodcast.com. At theprotestantlibertarianpodcast.com, you can also support the Christians for Liberty Network and the Libertarian Christian Institute. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode, and we will see you next Tuesday.